Welcome to Our College, Your Voices. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. I am excited to have with us Susan Hawkins-Wilding from our systems office academic advising team, and then a faculty member and a professional advisor today to talk more about the academic advising model and how it works from everyone's perspective. And of course, we're recording this while we're all working from our homes during COVID-19. So that's just a reminder that you will probably notice a little audio quality difference, but you will also probably hear us refer to that during the episode because it's just part of life right now. So this is a little different episode in that regard. But I am excited to have our panel talk about this. So let's meet them. First up is Gale Vaughn. Hi, Gale.
Hi, Dr. Monroe.
How are you today? And it's Kara, please.
Kara. It's going to be hard for me to do that.
I know.
I'm well. How are you?
I am all right. And remind us a little bit about who you are and what you do with the college.
Well, I am Gale Vaughn. I am the Program Chair for Human Services at the South Bend Elkhart campus. I've actually been with the college for 30 years in multiple roles in student affairs and now on the faculty side of the house. So.
Absolutely. Very good. It's good to see you, Gale, and great to talk to you. And next up is Nathan Jones. Hi, Nathan.
Hello, Kara. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing just fine.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for the college.
Okay, I'm an academic advisor at the Indianapolis campus. I've been with Ivy Tech for about 7.5 years now. And I actually ran the pilot for remote advising, and I've been working from home 2 nights a week for about a year, a little over a year now. And so it was kind of not as big a transition for me to be fully remote because I do it all the time.
Excellent. And we're going to dig into that quite a bit as well.
Okay.
And last but not least is Susan Hawkins-Wilding. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Kara. Good to see you, at least if it's through remote.
You too.
Susan. Thank you. I'm Susan Hawkins-Wilding. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Academic Advising, as Kara said, here in the Systems Office. And I have the pleasure of working with both of these individuals, but also, looking at a lens through different capacities, both from a professional advising experience and a faculty advising experience. I think it really does help bring kind of a different focus to how we engage with students. And as you mentioned, specifically during more remote engagement times.
Absolutely. So we have an advising model here that relies on both the professional advisor and the faculty advisor, and the student is an important part of that too. So I don't necessarily I don't want to take them out of it, but I'd like for each of you to talk a little bit about your roles specifically in the advising model.
From my perspective, from the faculty piece, is advising itself is very relationship in and of itself. So establishing that relationship at the very, very beginning is so key to students feeling comfortable having those difficult discussions with us. So one of the things that I make sure that I do is the advisor that is assigned to my program in the advising center, we start with our relationship. So we spend time together talking to each other about what is coming down the pipeline with my program. Whenever I'm in curriculum meetings, I make sure whatever's handed to me, she also has a copy of that, because to me, it's so important. She's seeing my students from admissions point of entry, and I'm not going to see them because as a chair, I teach for the most part the clinical part, so I'm at the 200 level. So if she's not having that information at the very beginning, it could be a year out before those students are actually in the classroom with me, and it's just so problematic to try to do cleanup when they've been on they thought was the correct pipeline along the way, and then we've made changes to curriculum. So that's one thing. Also, I also make sure that the students know. So I keep my cards down in the advising center, specifically with my advisor, and at the Express Enrollment Center desk as well too. So if a student has a question that deals specifically for course content, my advisor, she knows a little bit about my program, so she knows what's required academically. But I also tell her if they start in with those deep questions, send them to me right away so that I can have that conversation with them, and we can do a good job of making sure they understand why it's important, that it's probably not a good idea for you to be in biology in an 8-week course when you're in internship and you have all of that clinical work that you have to do. So it's very relationship given focus, and those students actually, I think they really appreciate the fact that when I see them in the classroom, they'll say, oh yeah, Leanna already told me about that. Well, I'm glad she shared that information with you. So do you have any other questions? Well, and then they may say some different things like that. And then so we both go back and forth with each other quite a bit, talking about what's happening in the program, what changes are going to come to the program, and what are good matches as far as classes.
Thanks, Gale. Nathan, did you want to share a little bit about your process?
Yeah, so I work in the advising center as an academic advisor. It's changed a bit over the years. When I first started, we only saw students in their first 24 credit hours, which I'm happy to say we've moved on to seeing them basically start to finish. I mean, there's a number of reasons why that's beneficial. It's good for the student because it provides continuity start to finish. And it's also good for the advisors because we actually get to see people complete their degrees. And we get that reaffirmation that we've got them, across the finish line, because before we just didn't know what always happened to them. So the nice thing about that is that we see students from their first, new student advising seminar where we kind of unpack what their goals are, what are their objectives, are they planning on transferring, are they not planning on transferring, things like that. So we can kind of get that initial picture, even though it may change and often does. We get that initial conversation going, and so we can build that relationship with them and help them take a long view of their educational goal, their plan, and then also explain sort of not just the how, but the why of how we plan their academic program for them. Because, we commonly get a thing, I just want to take all my general education classes. Well, I explain why that's actually a terrible idea. And that really, I teach, advise primarily for fine arts and visual communications, which those major courses are very project intensive. So the flip side, if they say they want to do all of those, that's also a terrible idea. I like to see the student take a balance of their general education, their have-to courses mixed nicely with their program level courses, which can be a lot more challenging as far as time-wise, especially with art. We don't want people rushing through their artwork. It makes terrible art. So I always try to get the students to see that the importance of balancing out those general education courses with those program core courses. That way they get a nice rhythm to the course load, so they're not, they're making progress towards their major and towards the things that they need to do in addition to that.
Great, thanks. I'll jump in and say, from my perspective in systems office, what's so great for me, and people have probably heard me say it before, but I think it's so important to repeat, is one of the great things about Ivy Tech is that we do have cross-campus collaborations and conversations. So I pull together the directors and the leads, and we share best practices. And as a team, we're always looking at how can we be helping students better? What are those things that we could do to help students be more successful? And if there's a great program happening on a certain campus, how can we then, people get excited and we steal ideas from each other? And so that's what's really fun for me in my role. And the other thing I think that's so important as part of my role is to continue with helping people with continuing training. We can always, it's a practice. Advising is a practice. It is a profession, and so we're always continuously learning in it and growing. And even something, we've done training for remote advising before, but what an opportunity in many ways where, here we are where we're really using it and learning from it as well. Or that collaboration with faculty, what can we learn from faculty and curriculum changes and things like that. So a big portion of that work for me is two things, that process and ways that we can help students have their completions, as well as what ways can we support the folks, both faculty and professional advisors on the campuses and the work that they do.
Excellent. Thank you all. That was so good. And Gale, I love, Susan said something in a state board meeting about how required advising is about the relationship. And I'm glad that message is echoing. It was so good to hear you say that. I wonder about the relationship building with those new students as a faculty member. And then Nathan, I'd love for you to weigh in, and Susan as well. But are there things that you as a faculty member do to intentionally build relationship with your newer students before they get to their 200 level classes when they see you? I'd love you to think about that and chat about that if there are specific things you do.
Oh, most definitely. So, one of the things that I started doing when I took over as the chair is that the very first week of term, whether it's the 16 rollouts and then I go again in the 8-week rollouts, my intro courses, I am there the first night. The faculty have gotten used to seeing me, so I meet every single one the first night, and I just come in for 5 minutes and say, "Hey, I'm Gale, I'm your chair," and and they're like, "Oh, wow," and those types of different things. And I just tell them about, I'm there to support you. You have a wonderful faculty member. A lot of my courses are taught by adjuncts, but I tell them these are working professionals. They are the ones that if you want to know what it's like to be a social worker, if you want to know what it's like to deal with this type of specific population, they will be great to ask those professional working questions. But I also want you to know that I'm here. I know I'm your faculty mentor, and you guys, I know it'll be a year before you actually see me in working in the classroom, but no, I'm always there to support you. And then I also reinforce for them, Leanna is my assigned advisor in the advising center. Everything that I know, Leanna knows, and I'm always there for you. So when I come in and check in with them, especially when it's like around midterm time, and say, "Hey guys, what's going on? What's happening? What do you need?" Don't forget, especially when we're in open registration period, don't forget, get your appointment with Leanna. If she's booked up, come see me. I have office hours as well too. We're here to support you. So it's not that they don't see me as a professor until the 200 levels, but they see me quite often in the hallways, and I'm always talking to them, and they know. And there's been a lot of it, again, because that relationship, I don't want to just be a name on the syllabi, because all my faculty have all my information on the syllabi. I would like to be that person that it's not just you coming to me because there's an issue and you don't feel like your issue is being resolved. I want to be that person that you can come to me and say, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking about as far as an internship," because again, with the clinical part, that's so important for my program and for their success. I'd like to know right away if you're thinking about going to an agency, that might be some place we don't have an agreement with yet. So let's start that conversation now so that we can get the paperwork going. So when you're taking internship a year from now, you're good to go. And we don't have to worry about, missing a step for you. So
Perfect. Nathan, from your perspective, anything to add from the faculty you work with?
Well, yeah, it's all definitely all about building a relationship. And one of the things that I tell people advising students both in my meetings, and I always go to the art classes and the visual communications classes every semester to introduce myself. And I tell them I'm not just an academic advisor, I'm also a professional artist myself. I've been in art my entire life, my entire adult life at least. And so I let them know that I attend the gallery shows for the art department. I go on field trips with the art department. Every semester, I send out a sort of welcome email, which includes a link to my website so they can go look at my artwork and see that I'm, not just a talking head. I'm also out there doing it as well. To build that connection that, hey, I may have a different path than you, but we're on the same, trajectory. And so that really helps. And just the more opportunities. And the nice thing about especially studio arts, it's very, social, community, collaborative feel to it anyway. So I can just pop into the art studios there on the second floor right above me. So it's very easy for me to access them. And for them, I say, hey, I'm right downstairs, stop by anytime. So I just make that, it's a very much not a completely open door, but they do need to schedule appointments, but I'm right there for them all the time. I do reach out in a lot of different ways, trying to meet them where they're at, because that's a big important part of it.
So for this next question, Susan, I'd like you to start and just give folks an overview of what the academic completion plan is. And then Gale and Nathan, I'd love to hear how you engage students in developing and then refining their academic completion plan as a part of the advising process.
Thanks, Kara. So I'm going to give just a brief history about the academic completion plan, in that we originally, quite a while ago, and actually even before I started, I came to the college in 2012, we had a paper version and had different name, but we were really trying to, from the point of research of students needing to really understand why they're here and how long they were going to be here and what specific classes they were going to take, allow them to see kind of not just what they need to take. So an academic completion plan goes beyond the what of what they need to take, and it's the when they're going to take things and the sequencing. It really actually tailors really nicely with what Nathan was saying about balancing your coursework and your time. I mean, our students have a lot of things on their plates. They're working, or their families, their own challenges. And so what that academic completion plan does is it helps them plot out their timeline of when they will reach their goals, and specifically how. And I think that's so important. And one of the things that brought this even more to the forefront is we began asking students, when do you want to complete? And it was interesting because their real first answer is, to be honest with you, the majority of them said 2 years. We're a 2-year program. And then our next question was, well, will you be full-time or part-time? And guess what their answer was? Their answer is, a lot of the times, part-time. And so it became this great opportunity for us to explain to them that if they want to complete in 2 years and they're going to be part-time, that how we could maybe achieve that, we'd have to do it with summers, or take an extra class here or there, or maybe, to be frank, it's going to be 3 or 4 years. But it was a great way to level set and help them understand that a 2-year degree may take longer if you're not going full time. The other, I think, nice thing about it is, if you think to yourself, I'm going to achieve a goal in 2 years, and you don't achieve it, it's not very motivating. It can feel like you failed, or it's very discouraging. And if you begin that conversation in the beginning and say, well, this is how it all works, and show them that whole picture, instead of getting to that 2 years and feeling like I haven't done anything, you're like, oh, I'm on the right path still. It's going to take me 3 years or 4 years, or we can, like I said, begin those conversations of how we could get you out of here sooner so you can enter the workforce or transfer or whatever. So that academic goal setting is so important to retention and completion, and having good shared goals that we have, that we're communicating and not just assuming things, and really planning and plotting it out. So that's the why. That's what an academic completion plan is. Why. The technical behind it is, we have the electronic tool that students have access to. They can see it. It's tied to their degree tracker, which nicely shows them the progression. And it's a shared kind of engagement that we can have with students. It's also a way for us to help them see if they're off path. So we have automatic flags in IB advising if they fail a course, or withdraw from a course, or don't take a course that we've planned with them. And it's a way for us to really help create a safety net, I hope, for the student, in order to help them stay on path. It's not without its challenges. We need to know when we're going to offer those courses, and hopefully have that be a real plan for them. Or our students change their programs, and that's part of their social growth and development. Sometimes they're hopefully learning a lot about what opportunities are out there, and so they change programs. So it's not without work for us as advisors, but hopefully you can tell, for me, I believe it's the right work to do. So that's just a little background of the why behind academic plans, and a little bit of the technology piece behind it. Nathan or Gale, do you want to share a little bit about how you engage with plans on the front lines?
Sure. I like how you described it, Susan. You said it's the what and the why. So from my perspective is, when I'm working with a student in the academic completion plan, I can now look at okay, they've declared this major, they've declared, what it is they're going to do as far as, whether they're going to be part-time or full-time. Now I can engage in the how part of it. And I can actually say to them, well, okay, your plan is to do this and this and this, but my program, there are 3 prerequisite courses that are entry level before they can get to me for internship. So I get to have those how conversations. So if you're only going to take one class at a time, this is what this is going to look like for you. And you've turned what could potentially be, as a part-time student, a 3 or 4 year plan into what may be actually a 5-year plan. Because if I can't, let's talk about your life outside of Ivy Tech, and is there a way that we can manage for you to get at least the first introductory courses in a timely manner, so that you can scale back. And then when it's time for internship, you only have to focus on that, because it's not just internship is so critical for our program. It's not just being in the building going through the lecture portion. It's actually that 160 hours of you working in the field. And then I can have that conversation, okay, well, you're also working 30 hours a week at this company. So how is that going to look? What is that going to look like in your world? And then again, because I know the curriculum, I know when the curriculum changes, I also can have that conversation with them. It's like, well, yeah, I know when you did this plan initially, we had you on plan to do your math at this time, but because of the change that's coming forth down the pipeline with HUMS, I need you to put math into maybe a summer rotation, and then I need you to put this human services course in there. So it's truly a working document. And it's one that we can have conversations with. And then again, I always go back to, when I'm making the changes, I always go back to my advisor, and I will tell her, Leanna, this is what I did with this student, and this is the reason why, because based on the conversation he or she had with me, this is what I need for them to do to move forward. And then also that other piece is, because a lot of my students are TSAP, I'm also at the table with the universities. And then they may, in the very beginning, at the first appointment with Leanna, said, hey, I'm going to IU, but because Purdue Global been in the classroom, now I really like that program, I'm changing my mind. I said, well, okay, that's going to change some things then, because this university wants this, IU wanted that, so let's rework it. So it's an evolving document, and it's one that it has its challenges, because we're always doing that changing. But I think also, as long as I'm having the conversation with the student and with my advisor, we can, get that student to the point of staying at the college and finishing, and then moving on to their next level.
So, I guess a good thing to follow up on that Susan had said is, I always try to break down this concept, because students often think they have to be done in 2 years. And I say, no. It's air quotes. I say, and I like to say, what does 2 years mean, to you? Because it's different from everybody. And there's no expiration date. We don't kick you out at the end of 2 years. And sometimes you can actually visually see people relax when you say that to them. And that's always an important thing, because I say this is not one size fits all. Everyone has different challenges, different things competing for their time, but we all have things competing for our time. So one of the things that I like to say to students when they're, wrestling with their course load and how many classes they should take, I say this all the time. It doesn't matter how many classes you take. What matters is how many you pass. So that's the most important thing for you to consider, is be realistic and honest with yourself about how many classes you can actually pass. That may be slightly self-serving, because I am really not a fan of doing SAP appeals. So I try and set that up ahead of time. But that's how I approach it with the students. And again, I talked about earlier, is creating a balance between the general educations, the sort of have-tos, and the want-tos, the courses within their major. I also try and definitely talk carefully about, the prerequisites that are, where do you need to start to get you where you want to go? And also, because I deal with art students and visual communication students who are, typically not math students, I tell them, head towards trouble. Don't put it off till your last semester, because that's the worst thing you can do to yourself. If you don't love math, start on it early and get it behind you. It doesn't have to be your first semester, but we should start working on math early on. So that then you can relax because math is behind you, and then science is behind you. And then, that way you're moving towards, the final completion. And I also talk carefully about not just the start of the program, but the end of the program, because for both fine arts and visual communications, they have a heavy, heavy capstone project that is worth a lot more time than the credit hours allotted to it. And so I tell them, try to plan ahead for that and have the lightest semester possible at the end so you can do your very best work in your capstone experience. Because especially for fine arts, your capstone's public. Everyone's going to see it. So you want to be able to dedicate time to that because it's hanging on the wall. You don't want it to be rushed. Okay? So those are some of the ways that I deal with it.
That's excellent. And we're all muting our mics when other people are talking, but I just have to say for the record that when Nathan said he's not a fan of SAP appeals, we all nodded our heads and laughed in agreement, because none of us want to have to walk a student through a SAP appeal. We hope to try to keep students out of that danger. So my last formal question for you is, what are you loving about remote advising? Because we're all doing it now. And what's still challenging to you? And Nathan, I'm going to ask you to go first, just given your experience with remote advising longer term. And then Gale, will go to you, and Susan wrap up.
Okay. Yeah. For me, one of the things that I have really enjoyed about doing the remote advising, for about a year and a half, a little over a year, I've been doing Sunday and Monday night from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Specifically targeting the people who work during, regular office hours. And I've met people who have never, ever seen an academic advisor. And they are generally so thankful to have someone working, outside the normal window. That's just been a real great bond. And I've got, some people who aren't even, they found me somehow. They're not even within my major, but they're so happy to be able to talk to me and talk to someone that they keep scheduling appointments with me. So that's a real blessing that we're extending to students that hasn't been available to them in the past. The other thing is because we try to be formal, but it's still more informal because I'm at home and they're at home. So there is a lightness to it, which actually, especially for new students, they can be so intimidated, especially if they're first time, college students, they can be so intimidated by the formality of going to the office and sitting in a chair face to face. I don't even have a webcam, so they don't even see me. They just get my little smiling headshot. But it puts them at ease and lets them open up in a way that sometimes we don't always see in the office setting. So that's a real plus to this online advising. And for me, the technology is not a big hassle. I'm pretty used to it now, so I find it very easy. And I can even, if I have some dead time, if I have someone no-show and then someone's sending me an email urgently, I can pop in. I'm like, are you available right now? Boom, we can do a quick meeting to fill in that gap. And so there's some nice things about that just aren't possible in the campus setting. Because again, we're reaching them kind of in their own life. It lacks the formality and the burden of travel and all of that. So there's a lot of things that we may see. This builds really good relationships with students over time. And I'm really hopeful about that.
For me, I was going to start with the challenges were from being in a program that we're people. So to actually not be physically in a room with a person, whether it's in the classroom or it's, I've done hallway advising with my people sitting in our comfy chairs on the second floor and those types of different things. So that was just a big change. And my students, it took some time for them to get adjusted to it. But once they realized that Zoom is not, this evil word and those types of different things. And they started popping in on it. And what I'm enjoying is that they're telling me, oh, we're even talking to each other outside of the time when you have us in class or we're working together on some sort of project or something. So that's, to me, is actually one of the positives of it. We're seeing different levels of relationship building with the students now being in a remote world. I'm seeing things that I never would have saw from the students, especially, in the homes. I'm seeing babies and kids and significant others. I've had students, talk to me in their cars, with their smartphones and advising on their way to the grocery store and those types of different things. And even my students I have students that are using interpreting services and actually having that level of involvement with the signers and me and that student is just a totally different. And like Nathan said, even if it's not during my normal virtual hours, if a student sends me something and it's like, oh, Gale, I need you real quick. Do you have 15 minutes? I can quickly send them something, a link, and we're able to have those conversations at that moment that they need me versus waiting to the next time that I have office hours. So it's seeing students in a different light, them seeing me in a different light as well, too, because there's been a couple of times myself, life has happened because I'm in my home and something's like, okay, why is my child here right now? But anyway, those types of different things. So it's been different, and I'm not a big technology person, so it took me a moment to learn this environment and advising in this way, teaching this way. But it's a challenge that I think we came up to, and we're figuring it out as it goes away, as it comes along. And sometimes, with the echoes and those types of different things, there's been a couple of times the Wi-Fi may have been not that great for even on my end, because I live out in the county. So sometimes it's like, yeah, that's not really a good connection, but we figure it out and we keep moving on. And the students, my first actual advising appointment with a student using it, and this was a student that's graduating in May, and she had questions about her transfer, so she had sent me some stuff that she had got from the university. And I actually have two computers. I have the one that Ivy Tech has, and then I have my own personal, and I'm on the side saying, wait a minute, just a second, I'm really paying attention, but I need to go over here and try to pull something off of the university website to make sure I understand what they sent you. And so, but we figured it out, and she even shared with her classmates. She was like, well, yeah, advising was a lot different that way, but it was fun. So, but, yeah, we're learning.
Thanks, Gale. I think the things that we're hearing from folks is that students were slow to it some. And then there are those, like Nathan said, that embrace it. It's a change. We had to take some time to get ourselves together and get ourselves set up and get comfortable and things like that. A lot of us have been doing it, but not this consistently. We are still seeing that students are gravitating towards email, and that takes longer for us to engage with them that way. And so we're really trying to encourage them to a real meeting. It doesn't have to be video, like Nathan said, so that we can answer their questions and it not be a time delay back and forth and take more time. So that's the challenge. I think, though, what I want to say from what both Gale and Nathan said is there are opportunities during this COVID crisis. There's so much learning that's taking place. I really feel like the learning that's coming out of this is really going to long-term, I want to believe, some good that comes out of it, long-term impact our teaching, our engagement with students in unique and varied ways. Nathan brings up a great point about different hours and our students' transportation challenges or anything like that. Think about what great opportunity this, we're very lucky that we have this technology already. And so I think there's always going to be challenges, but I think the levels of opportunity for us to build relationships in unique ways is what's so exciting for me on it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for being on today. I want to add a call to action to this episode, as I do every one, which is to encourage your students to get their advising appointments. As Susan said, try to make those by video. You don't have to turn your camera on. It's okay. But it does help that student get that academic completion plan locked in and open up their PIN for them so they can register for summer and fall, because we are still continuing business, and it is important to us that students come in and get registered for summer and fall. So with that, I want to thank all of you for joining today's episode of Our College, Your Voices. And I especially want to thank the members of the panel, Gale Vaughn, Nathan Jones, and Susan Hawkins-Wilding. Thank you to all of you for joining today. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. You can connect with me on Twitter at KNM Tweets. You can reach us by email at ourcollegeyourvoices@ivtech.edu. Leave us a voicemail at 317-572-5049. If you are an Ivy Tech faculty or staff member, don't forget that you can join our Microsoft Teams listener community. Our website is ivytech.edu/podcast. Production assistance for this and every episode provided by Becky Campbell, Sarah Ferguson, and the Ivy Tech Community College marketing team. And our podcast concept is by Matthew Pittman. Theme music and post-production services provided by the incredibly talented Jen Edds at the Brassy Broadcasting Company. And we will talk to you next time on Our College, Your Voices.